Hi, welcome to my channel called Nugget of Wisdom. It's taken me several weeks to actually get focused on this video and what I'm going to try and explain in the next few moments, because I've spent some time looking at all the kinds of debates that are going on in the world. Ukraine, the Middle East, Gaza, Netanyahu, the election of Trump, the demise of the Democratic Party and Harris, Biden and all the conversation about his ability to do what he's doing, the UK and the sort of the vote against renewing the winter fuel allowance. Our Prime Minister in the UK's support for giving more weapons and funding to Ukraine, discussions about nuclear war, all sorts of stuff. And I've come to a couple of conclusions based on a very unique experience I had with the political system for several years. So, speaking as somebody who was on the inside of the political system and seeing how it works. And in my experience when I was in the political system, it was very, very, very different to what people see on the outside. It's very hard to express this, but when you're outside the political system, you're subject to so much propaganda, to so much manipulation, either through legacy media or through political parties. And we all tend to be very tribal, and we all tend to be very sort of dualistic in our approach. Or we'll go for this person this time. Or no, we went for that person last time, it didn't work out, we'll go for this person. And in all of my sort of observation of chat shows online and terrestrial TV, debates from independent media, what really has struck me and kind of triggered me to put this video on now, the aha moment where I'm like, that's what I need to do. That's the video I need to put on. What's really triggered me is something that's so obvious. And that obvious fact is that no one is talking about solutions to any of our problems. No one. And if there is someone, I'd love to hear from them. I'd love to see their solution. So I'm trying to really give you, I'll give you an analogy. Your car keeps breaking down. You go to the garage, and when you go to the garage, a really nice guy meets you, compliments you on the clothes you're wearing, says your car's really wonderful, says they'll fix it, gives you a cup of coffee, a piece of cake. You come back 2 days later, he says your car's completely fine and it's working. You go away, and then short time later it breaks down again. You go back to the same guy, does the same thing. Eventually you get fed up because your car keeps breaking down, so you go to a different garage. You go into the garage, you try to get the car fixed, and another really smooth, cool person comes on and says, yeah, I can fix your car, charges you a lot of money, you can leave the garage, your car doesn't work. In this circumstance, you're trying to get your car fixed, you're trying to get some work done, but none of the problems are being addressed. But there's a grubby mechanic somewhere. He's just a nobody. He's not going to give you coffee. He's greasy. If you talk to him directly, if you or her directly, and you leave them with the car for an hour, it's likely you'll come back and that person will tell you in very sort of difficult to understand what's wrong with your car. You'll go into a whole pile of technical detail. You'll get lost, but he'll be able to fix your car. He'll go over, he'll get a spanner, he'll get a tool out, a screwdriver, a diagnostic piece of equipment. He'll disconnect a cable, he'll undo a bolt, and 5 minutes your car's fixed. And you won't believe it. You'll just go, what? Was that it? I mean, I've spent all this time going to different garages and being charmed and getting a cake and a coffee and spending hundreds of pounds when I could have just went to this guy and he could have just done this for me in 10 minutes. And within politics and within what I'm observing, there's two problems. One, we're all very tribal. So no one is talking about, pretty much no one. There may be somebody out there, there must be. But no one is talking about the fix, which is the most important thing. You can talk about taking people to court. You can talk about getting rid of people. You can talk about changing to a new government. You can talk about a petition to get rid of your government and get a new one. But if you've got the same problem, how the hell are you ever going to fix a problem by just shuffling things around? If it's all personality based, oh, well, she did this, he's not right, I don't believe him. But what is fundamentally wrong? No one's talking about it. What's even more astonishing is we're really in a big situation here. I mean, my car analogy, if your car was going to burst into flames when you drove it, there was a possibility, a 20% chance, a 30% chance, a 10% chance, you'd really want to find out who could actually fix your car properly. And you would not worry about a greasy guy or somebody who was nerdy or whatever. And you wouldn't care about having a coffee. You'd say, look, I need this car fixed because I don't want to drive it because it's dangerous. And the world's in a really dangerous position at the moment. We could end up with serious wars. And we're already kind of in a world war between NATO/US and Russia. We're seeing around the world some of the most horrendous things happening. Look at what's happening in Gaza. So it fascinates me that literally no one is talking about solutions, but everybody's talking about blame. It's her fault, it's his fault, it's this, it's that, it's the other thing. Get rid of them, we'll get this instead, we'll have this person. So the next question you might want to ask is, well, okay then, what about your solution? Where's your solution? And I'm going to tell you my solution. It's so simple. This is the other thing you'll notice. Everybody's talking about all of these kind of human factors and who's wrong and analysing and satire about people and being insulting about people and blaming this person, blaming that person. But they don't actually come up with any sort of antidote solution. It's like going to the hospital. People talk about your problem, but nobody comes out to say, okay, this is what we need to do. Even if they're wrong, we think this is your problem, we're going to have to do an operation. There's risks involved. And so the solutions as well are so simple. And this is, you may switch off now, but the solutions to our problems in the world today are absolutely, utterly simple. And I'm not talking to you as some nobody out in the street who doesn't understand anything. I'm an engineer. I was an engineer, designer, politician, head of scrutiny in a big regional council. Met all sorts of people, independent MPs, political MPs, political parties, all sorts of stuff. I got a good grounding in how the system works. And you'll find that the debate and the narrative is all about it's complicated. So you go to that garage and you talk to the guy and you get your car repaired and you come back and he says, oh, I'm so sorry, but it's complicated. The reason why your car doesn't work, it's so complicated. It's really difficult to fix. He's not going to say to you, it's easy. It's probably the grubby mechanic who's just going to walk over and turn a dial or switch a lever or, plug something out and plug it back in again, or switch a wire over, and straight away your car's working. So it's so simple to fix our political problems. And I'm going to tell you straight up, you've got to take all of the money out of politics and political representation. That's it. That's all you've got to do. So what do I mean by taking the money out of politics? Okay. So the first thing I would do is I would insist that all elected representatives, whether that's at regional council level or it's at parliamentary level, senators, governors, whatever you want to call it, this sort of applies. Slightly different tweaks and applications, but it applies to basically all democratic systems. You basically say to your elected rep, you now work for the people. You work for us. And we pay you. And we're going to pay you a whoppingly good salary. We're not going to basically pay you the money that you would pay a janitor to be somebody leading a council with maybe £1 billion budget. We're not going to pay you the salary of a middle manager in a company that has a turnover of maybe £10 million when you're an MP in a company that has a turnover of billions. If you're a minister, if you're somebody in a senior position, you're going to get paid well. You're going to get really good money just to make sure you're safe and secure and you have proper security. You're going to get a really good pension. You're going to get really good holiday rights. But you work for us, the people. So in return, you've got to give up all your connections to secondary money. You can't run a business. You can't have investments in things that are influential within your portfolio. You can't have sort of shares in all sorts of companies that you can influence and get money out of as a politician. You can't get any funding from private sector for your political campaigns. You drop all of that. So you might say, well, how is that going to work? Well, let me give you another good comparison. Imagine I walked into a company and I got offered the opportunity to become the business development manager. And the company directors and EMD really liked me and said to me, we like you, we'd like you to work for us. And I said, yes, I want to take this job. I like your salary, I like the company, it's fantastic. But I'm also going to work for several of your competitors. What do you mean by that? Well, I'm going to work for you, I'm going to do a great job, but I'm also going to work as the business development manager for your direct competitors. I see you've got 3 or 4 companies out there who really want to take your market share, and I'm going to be there, the business development manager as well. What do you think would happen? Would you get the job? Would I get the job? No chance. Why? Because as soon as I took that job, I would play each company off each other. I would sell myself to the highest bidder. Company number 2 offered me more money to steal the customers off the company number 1 that I was working for. Then I'd start to basically pull business into company number 2. If company number 3 thought, oh, well, that's no good, we're losing business now as well. Can I steal company number 2's business, but we're going to double your salary? I go, of course. It's completely unworkable. Second example. Imagine you're a football team and you're in a football match and you're playing football against a second team. And the referee is getting a small salary, but is actually working for special interests and working for each side, each team, depending on what it can get from them. How the hell could you even have a football match? It's impossible. The teams have to just walk away. Because the idea of a referee is that they're impartial. That they, within a set of rules, make sure that the match and the game can be played and that the rules apply to both sides within the best of their ability and they can't be bought. So how is a political system supposed to work where the scrutiny chamber, the House of Lords, for example, is full of special interests, people who are paid to do a job, but get that job based on their loyalty to political parties and their financial loyalty. It's impossible. So what I'm trying to say here is it's so obvious that if you want to have somebody working for you, if you as the public, we as the public, want to have reputable people working for us, then a basic requirement is that they work for us. They get paid by us. On top of that, if they're doing a bad job before the end of their term, if I'm working for a company and I've got a 5-year contract, but they get no sales for the first 2 years from me as their sales manager, they will have a clause that says, we can just dismiss you and pay you off. Goodbye. If the pool of candidates for a company is so small and so filtered and so doctored and so manipulated that there's only 2 people who can apply for the job of MD of a company, and it's down to Miss Harris or Mr. Trump, that company is not going to do very well. Because that company is going to have maybe 50 people, 100 people apply for that job. They will go through all the CVs. They'll try to see how experienced they are, what their qualifications are, what they've achieved. They want to know, what have you achieved? What have you done? Specific to the things that we want to employ you for. And then they'll have an interview process. And they'll whittle it down. So the interesting thing here is that, I suppose what I'm trying to get across to you is that people would say to me, oh, you private business needs to have a say when it comes to politics, and people with money are good in politics and important. I'm saying, absolutely. People who have business experience, people who have been entrepreneurs, MDs in the private sector, anybody, doctors, nurses, anybody who's worked delivering things, whether it's the private sector, the public sector, whatever, is a fantastic candidate in the electoral system, and they should be able to put themselves forward. But once they do that, they should be specifically working for the people. And so that's really the number one item. The next thing I'll say to you is that if you look at America today, 2024, and the recent election of Donald Trump, you will see in the campaigns from the MAGA, Make America Great Again, the big focus has been on, we want to make America better again, great again. We want to make sure that the people, the ordinary people, the taxpayers, the workers, we want them to have a fairness. We want them to have a decent salary, decent housing, decent, the cost of food is at the right price. We want to get rid of corruption. We want to get rid of boring administration and waste of money. We want to bring in proper control of immigration. And on and on. We don't trust the media. We think billionaires have got too much of an influence on the system. We want to support media that is not legacy because it's fake news. Look at exactly what's happening in the US. All that's happening is that you're trading one dysfunctional system exactly for another dysfunctional system. You've got billionaires and millionaires with big egos coming in with pretty much no experience of how the public sector works, the military. They're also controlling media. So love them or hate them, you've got to go, okay, so this person is controlling. What if this person dies? What if this person leaves? Who's controlling it then? It's not systemic. It's people, individuals. It's a bit like saying, that tree is really struggling. I know it's wrong. It's that branch. Let's just cut off a few branches and it'll be fine. But in reality, you're not looking at the roots of the system. And so in the US, what's likely to happen is that come the end of the next term, the people will be disgruntled and fed up with their leaders and will be looking for somebody else. You'll see the same in the UK. And in fact, what will probably happen is the more and more frustrated people become at the issues around delivery of their politicians, the more and more extreme people they will vote for. Because they're fed up. They're fed up. They go to the garage. They bring the car. They say to the salesman there, I have this problem. He says he'll fix it for them. They go away. They find it breaks down again. They go back to the garage. They do this over and over. They go to a different garage. Well, it's a different garage. It's a different salesman. Let's try it. And in the end, they become more and more disillusioned. And they don't get anything done, basically. And we all know that this is the case. I mean, in all honesty, any of the few people who are listening to me now, do you really, really, really believe that you're going to really see major positive changes in our political system in the next 5 to 10 years as it stands? Ask yourself, all the simple things that people are trying to do, whether they're trying to stop violence, they're looking for peace, they're trying to get a more efficient health service, what has happened to us in the last few years? Nothing has really improved. Really, if you look at national debt, if you look at the waiting list for the hospitals, if you look at taxation, if you look at the wars, the money being spent on wars, the kinds of changes and positive changes that you would expect in a modern, technological, democratic society ain't happening. And people are still having old arguments, whether it's arguments about gender, it's arguments about abortion, it's arguments about marriage, or it's arguments about immigration. All these arguments keep coming up unresolved. Why? Because there isn't any intent on resolving them, because they come up at election time and they're highly emotional triggers for people. And what they do is they separate people into groups who then fight each other. So you can see that I don't have much confidence with the system that we've got. Going to the same garage or a different garage with the same sort of process, it's never going to work. I'd rather push the salesman out of the way and go straight to a mechanic and say, look, can you help me? Or go down the street to a little workshop where a guy, he's well respected and well recommended. He comes out all covered in oil and grease and he looks at my car and he shows me what's wrong. Or he guarantees me. He says, look, don't pay me. Don't pay me until your car's running efficiently for the next 3 months, and then you can pay me without any breakage. So the other things here that relate to money, as I said, paying politicians a decent salary. Now, you have been fed a load of BS for years. You have been conditioned to believe that the people who are supposed to work for you are crooks, and that you can never have somebody in position of power who isn't a crook. So when I say to you, the leader of, say, a big council that has £1 billion turnover, don't pay her or him £30,000 a year. Pay them several times. Pay them the same as what a company on a similar level will get paid. Your immediate response, and the response of the opposition political parties, will be, he wants to pay these terrible politicians who are useless. He wants to take taxpayers' money. Well, yeah, I do. I want taxpayers' money, not private money. I want you to pay your politicians. And you are going to get so much better value. Just like I said with the company, I want to employ that person to work for me, and I'm going to pay him or her a great salary, but I don't want him or her to work for somebody else, because I get no value from that. I also want to pay him or her a great salary, so that they won't work for somebody else. They'll work for me. They won't leave and they won't go off and work for somebody else. They'll work for me. And I want them to have a really good reward for what they do if they do a good job. If they do a bad job, I don't want them anymore. That's how the private sector works, by the way. So, as I said, none of these, fingers in pies, making policies in government that affect finances and then having shares in companies that will do well out of it. That's out. And politicians who even try to do that are just sacked, gone. They know the consequences. They have no possibility of doing these things. They're now working for you, for me, the people. That's it. No paid lobbyists. So lobbyists are these groups of people who hang around. The European Union, there are hundreds of them. There are more lobbyists in the European Union than there are MEPs. Right? So this is like working for a company again. And having groups of people with loads of money hang around the car park when you leave at night. It's like, hey, listen. I know you work for them, but if you let me in on some of their company secrets, if you do this, if you do that, I'll give you some extra money. Out. Lobbyists can lobby. They can come to government and they can go to a committee and they can say, we would like to give evidence about why our company would do better if you change these laws. Fine. Lobbyists get access to make their case, but there's no financial transactions at all. No money transacts. And the lobbyists are only allowed to lobby in a certain forum. In other words, through a scrutiny process. They're not allowed to just meet and try and fiddle their ways into focusing on particular MPs or particular elected representatives. No, there's a forum where they're allowed, yes, come in. We're now going to change housing policy. Let's bring developers in to show them what we've done. Let's have it all in the public domain, video the whole thing, and let's basically let them put their case forward as to why they think this policy is good or bad for them. That's absolutely fine. And the same for anybody else who has an interest. No private party funding. If I'm in that job in that company and I need to buy a suit and I need to buy, myself a portfolio and I need to get somebody to do my CV for me and all these things. And this guy says, I'll pay for the whole lot. And I'll pay to give you the best opportunity to get yourself into this company position. But in return, I want you to help me out. When the MD says, go and do this, I want you to say, no, we want to do this first. That's never going to work. How can that work? So what happens, just like when you go for a job, is that the government pays for the election process, including all the campaigns. It's very simple in this modern world. You don't have loads of paper printing of leaflets that are always full of disinformation, propaganda and lies. You don't have any of that. What you do is you have one little booklet, and in that booklet, every candidate that you can vote for has got the same amount of space, whether it's 1 page, 2 pages, whatever. And in that, they explain who they are, why they think they want to be elected, and what they'd like to do in their policies. There's a link to a website, a government-regulated website, which allows them to take up a space, have a video, and a whole list of the things they want to do for you. You have proper debate process where each candidate comes and there's a national debate or a regional debate where people can come and ask questions. The questions are chosen through lottery or random. You have an independent person who's basically doing an adjudicator, a referee, and a whole process where the public can get to really know who the candidate is, what their proposals are, what they would like to do. You can have a decent debate. All of that is paid for by the government. And nothing is done privately. Zero. You could argue, there's a little bit of a variant where you say, okay, well, if you want to join a party and you're a member, then there's a maximum amount of money that you can donate. So you could do that. You could say, okay, the maximum amount of money that can be donated is £50 or £100 or £500. I actually would recommend political parties are completely disbanded. Now, people will say, oh, that's communism. No, that's. No. You could have political groups. So when you are elected, you could, just like they do in, for example, the EU, they have political groups. You can have the conservative political group. That group says, we all agree on a certain number of things, and we think we should be the ones to be the executive, the ones that are the ministers and running the government. And here is our set of our agenda. But there's no money connected to that formation. That formation is a political group, but not a political party. That way, you just cut out so much corruption. There are examples as well. I think Australia is one, where at regional and council level, they have no political parties. And what that does, it takes out this corruption that you have, where you have at local level, infrastructure, highways, housing, development, all sorts. And at government level, there's a corruption link between the two, where money is being moved and siphoned and laundered. If you break that link, and regional councils or regional governments have much more autonomy and tax raising and so on, are not connected to special interests, are not connected to national policy special interests, you will start to see a very much more efficient process coming together, because these people will care about their own area. What's better is if they succeed, if they manage to balance the books, if they manage to make a profit for their regional area, if they manage to reach targets for health and social care and transportation and everything else, that they get some sort of bonus. It doesn't have to be monetary. It could be the council gets a bonus so that they're supported in some way to do new projects. They're given more control of budgets because now they're showing that they're doing a great job. They're given much more ability to have tax raising powers, taking national income tax out, but actually switching it with local tax raising as much as possible. So they have more autonomy to do more things. And these, you heard about APAC, these PACs, these funding PACs that you have in the US, out. Just look at what's going on in the US. Just look at what's going on with the Israeli lobby in the US. And it's all about money. You call it the Jewish lobby. A country where the Jewish population is probably a small proportion of the total population, yet it has so much influence. And this goes on everywhere. This is going on in every democratic country. Different groups with different special interests pushing their agendas. And why wouldn't I? I don't disagree with them doing it. If the system is like that, they will do it. They will push the system to get what they want. Of course they will, if they've got loads of money. The other thing is that think tanks are another little sneaky little device. This is like a group of people who are trying to shape policy. They can set themselves up sometimes as charities, under the idea of promoting democracy or promoting diversity or whatever it might be. Those think tanks are often linked to political parties and are used as a funnel to take donations and money. And those think tanks often unfairly and disproportionately put out policy ideas which are just based on political interests. Think tanks should have nothing to do with the process of I work for you, or you work for I work for you, and you, the people, are basically my bosses. So I'm not a fan of these think tanks. If you want to have think tanks, they're completely separate organizations. They're not funded by anything political or anyone political. Membership of organizations. So the politicians will also be potentially members of various associations and groups. They must all be declared. So everybody who's a member of any organisation and wants to be a politician must declare it, and it must be easy to see who they are. This is about money as well. Influential groups of people who these people are connected, these elected reps are connected to, and making decisions to help them out. And I would go further than that. I would say, really, wherever you have any kind of role in policy making, if you're a member of any of these groups, you cannot have a place in it. You know, if you're a member of the Football Association and you're in there making policies about crowd control of football matches, you shouldn't be doing it. You shouldn't be part of it. You can be part of a scrutiny process where you go in and give advice. I've got this experience. I was a doctor. I was a nurse. I was in this. I was in that. And I would like to sit on a committee for scrutiny, to scrutinize policies that have been made. That's fine. But those making decisions and setting up policies should not be linked to these organisations directly, because there's too much opportunity for corruption, special interest to have an undue influence on policy making. And that's pretty much. Oh yes, so I just scribbled these things down, but they've been in my head for a long time. House of Lords, gone. Replaced with an independent scrutiny chamber. That means that the people elected into that office are totally independent. They're not part of any political group, or they don't set up a political group. They scrutinise the policies of government. They got the powers to do that, which is all about looking at policies and asking questions, get members of the public to come in. And you have a system which encourages lots of people with specialist skills, doctors, nurses, bus drivers, post office workers, lawyers, entrepreneurs, people who have got a lot of understanding of the system to come in and put themselves forward. But again, once they become independent scrutineers, they get paid a salary, they get elected to that position, and they let go of all the other positions that they're in life. Good for retired people. A retired person who's very wise and long experience, a retired surgeon. Well, who's better than a retired surgeon or a retired nurse to be in the scrutiny chamber when the government is setting policies? And then you can, on healthcare, and then you can bring in all of the special interests to submit to that scrutiny committee, to come in the public domain and say, we're a private hospital, we think your policy is going to be really damaging, we're a medical company, we're a medicine company, whatever. And they can come in and argue their point about why they think the policy won't help or will help. But it's totally independent of special interest. They have a say, they have an opportunity to express themselves. We try to be democratic, but they don't influence policy decisions directly through financial means. Yeah, listen, have some money and help me out. Change our policy because I'm going to give you this money for your electoral campaign. It can never work. And, you know, I could go on and on and on. The last money-orientated thing would be to have a new campus in the UK, for example. So the Parliament in London is a beautiful building. It actually needs a whole pile of renovation anyway. That becomes a kind of a tourist attraction. So most of the year people will go to that place and they'll go around and have tours. Maybe at the ceremonies that they want to have once a year, twice a year, Parliament can meet there. But most of their business is done in a new modern building with all the technology for decent sound and audiovisual, webcasting and all that kind of stuff. It's put more central into the country, so it's seen to represent the whole country. And then it's a campus. So MPs don't have to buy second properties or any of that stuff. They have a luxury hotel system where they go on the campus, and when they go up to do a meeting at the Parliament, they can stay there and they can sleep there. Apartments and so on. It's secure, it's safer for them, it's easier when it comes to transport. And the public, the people, have this feeling that this Parliament represents them all. And we don't take away the beautiful old building in London, it stays there. It earns a ton of revenue for the taxpayer because it's now much more of a touristy building. There's an opportunity to renovate it because all these people have moved somewhere else. And you still use it now and again. It still has that role for large-scale annual meetings, perhaps, ceremonial type meetings. And that the kind of last bit of this, I keep adding things on, but politicians must balance the books. So part of the role of the politicians is to deliver good financial management. It's primary. Look at the US, they're printing money at them. They've got money has lost all its value. They're printing money based on a promise. And at some stage, they're going to hit the cliff and fall off. So really, and again, this is again special interests. If you're in a government and you've got a role which it says you could just print money, I mean, what would you do? Somebody said to you, look, here's a printer, just print as much money as you want. And you've got all these special interests trying to get money and get influence. You're going to print loads of money and shove it everywhere without any real sort of understanding about how that is going to affect the overall health of that economy and the people who are in it. Their healthcare system, their added social care system, public services, housing, all this sort of stuff. So if you don't balance the books, then there's repercussions. You lose something. If you don't balance the budget of the council 2 years in a row, it triggers another election. And there has to be new membership. You're given opportunities to, if you don't balance the books, the scrutiny process comes in, looks at it all and says, okay, this is not working. We vote that there has to be a new group of people running the government or going to run the council. So you have to pick a load of different MPs and new political groups to run things with a new process. Okay, this is how we'll balance the books. You've got to have that. It's fundamental to running an economy. It's fundamental to running a household. Let's be honest, look at your house. You have to be able to balance your finances. Even if it means having to tighten your belt and do stuff that's basically going to, be a bit of a constraint for a while. It has to be done. And in the end, it will lead to good governance and people having more money, more abundance, rather than less. But also, I do believe that a mechanism which I haven't really worked out, but if your politicians are doing a really terrible job, that you have some sort of trigger, referendum trigger. It says, well, in your constituency, you were elected by 20,000 people. If more than 5,000 people come along and say they're not happy with your progress or your performance, you're given some sort of opportunity to try and put it right. If not, you're out, or we trigger another election. So that's basically it. If you did most of these things, fundamentally, if you break the link between financing, private financing, or lobbyist financing, public service financing, where unions are paying money to the political system, hey, they're just special interests. A union that loves the public service and gets subs from thousands and thousands of people will want to make sure that there's 3 nurses for every patient in a hospital, when we only need 2. Money from the private sector will want to influence the system so that there's 3 nurses for every patient, but they're all 2 or all of them are funded by the private sector and pushed into the private sector. So private people control the whole system. Both systems will give you bad value for money. Because there's lobbyists, there's people working behind the scene to feather their own nests. And what I would say to you finally is that forget the judgment. Don't waste your time judging. Because I have to be humble enough to say, if I was in that position, if I was in the position to be able to make tons of money in a system that's institutionally rotten to the core. And I couldn't change it. And if I tried to change it, I'd be kicked out. What would I do? I might go, well, I'll just work the system. I'll try to do some good things. I, like anybody else, could quite easily be influenced into becoming a sort of hybrid of some corruption and some good stuff. Or more corruption. So in many ways, that's a waste of energy. Trying to sack people and put in new people and all that sort of stuff, what I see Trump will do now in the US, get rid of that guy over there, we'll put this guy instead. It's a waste of time. You need a systemic change. This is systemic change. You need a systemic change that focuses around taking money out of being the influencer of the politician and making sure that politician works for the people. That's it. Why do you not hear anybody talk about this? There's a very simple reason, that all the other stuff that's going on, the millions of people, the podcasts and the Joe Rogans and all these people who are just talking and talking and talking and talking about this politician and that politician, how bad they're exposing, in my view, it's useful. Because what it does is it shows us we have a problem. It's like when you're driving the car and you're saying, oh, there's a noise coming from here and it doesn't work properly and sometimes I do this. And that's great from a diagnosis point of view. But there comes a point where the mechanic will say, thank you very much. Okay, I've listened enough now. You don't have to tell me about every journey. You don't have to continue complaining and comparing. Thank you. Now what we've got to do is start to make some fixes and changes. And none of that is happening anywhere in the mainstream. None of it. And so it's pretty much impossible to fix the system in that way. And we all know it. You know it. You know it because you have no trust in the political system. And that's why people don't vote. That's why people just go, oh, it's a waste of time. And what that does, it feeds into those who have these special interests, because the pool of people who vote gets smaller and smaller. They vote on tribal interests. And the people who are what I call issues voters, who think, hold on a second here, I'm not really interested in political parties. I want to see this happen. I want a better public service. I want to see some action, some change. Those people just walk away. And then when trustworthy people come in, either they don't get the say, or they become corrupted after a while because they go, well, there's nothing I can do. It's a waste of time. I'll just do some good here. And yeah, to get myself into this position, I'll basically follow the rules of the system that we're in. So that's it. I'd love to know what your comments are. I think I'm the only person that I've come across who's giving you actual, real, tangible things that could easily be done. That pretty much most of this we'd all agree on straight away. And I think in one cycle of election, which is 4 to 5 years, I think you'd switch the system around. You'd switch it from being probably mostly institutionally corrupt and not working for the people to mostly institutionally good and fairly honest. I'm not saying you'd eliminate corruption. I think what would happen is then you'd have to tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak. Maybe take some examples of other democracies in Europe, have scrutiny of lots of different systems that people use. And over time, over years, keep evolving it to make it better and better and better, more representative, having a feedback loop. Does that work? No, it doesn't. Okay, let's try this. Just like a design engineer. But the main functional change would be the money. Allowing money as a tool to influence how you get things done. And breaking that link, which is what it does, to say the politicians work for the people. They're answerable to the people. And who are the people? The people are the people who voted for you. So they're everyone. They're all the adults who voted in the election, whether they're rich or poor, black, white, able-bodied, it doesn't matter. Whatever the makeup of that population is, they're the people, and you have to then work for those people. You're not working for a concentrated few. That's the core of it. And the money taken out of that system, in the ways that I've said, is the way to do it. I would also say to you that if I was now today sitting in a room full of politicians and I was talking about how evil Putin is, and I was talking about how I'm really disgusted about seeing men who have converted to women being in a women's swimming competition, or the number of weeks about abortion when we should or shouldn't have abortion, or about Black Lives Matter, and about racism, or about immigration. The people who really control our political system, who are behind the scenes, by the way, would have no interest in me. They'll be on their smartphones. They'll be like, yeah, when is he going to finish? The minute I started talking about these things, they will just literally go, who is that guy? Who is he? I want to find out what the hell is going on here. That guy is trouble. Those ideas, we have to stop him. That's what would happen. Because just like the mechanic, I could just walk up and go, yeah, these are the things we need to do. This is how we fix the system. It's easy, it's simple. And I know this because I experienced it. When I was in a regional council, I got to a very unusual state where I was influencing national policy on planning and local policy on planning, and it was influencing millions and millions of pounds. And I started to democratise the whole process because I was an engineer. I had no interest in politics. I didn't even see myself as a politician. As soon as I started doing that, the eyes of these people were directly burning into me. And then I could write a book on what happened, about the things they did to basically either buy me off, to undermine me, to destroy my reputation, to make threats against my family, to run PR campaigns to turn the community against me. And in the end, I had to leave the political world because it was untenable. And all of this happened when I started to make major policy. I was several years in politics, and I was the darling of the people, and I was respected and loved by everybody. But once I started to make changes that had huge influence, I could actually really make a difference. There was a concerted campaign to literally destroy me. And I was in a small community, educated people, this wasn't some deeply corrupt country. This was just a normal place. But because of the money and the influence to the changes that I could have made to policy, those people just woke up. Who is he? And it's the exact same. And the reason you don't hear about these things is for that very reason. You're distracted. You're distracted into being emotional. You're distracted into being tribal. You're distracted into dividing up into different groups. The Americans. Who's America's worst enemy today? It's Americans. Half of America has got a phony hatred of the other half. If you're a Republican, you hate the Democrats. If you're a Democrat, you hate the Republicans. There are people behind the scenes who are laughing their heads off at this. People fight each other and go against each other because the people behind the scenes who do not want this stuff to come out want you distracted. They want you distracted, and they want you to form into tribes. And I'm just going to be honest with you. It's a complete load of nonsense. There's no possibility in Europe, in the UK or America of any of the politicians that I've seen over the last few months, of any of those politicians making any kind of substantial positive change to the lives of the masses of the people, of the voters. No possibility. Because they're not trying to systemically fix anything. It's just BS. That's all it is. People who are trying to take over. I'll take control of this now. And they're not going to be able. First of all, they've got half of them no experience, no understanding. And they've got massive egos. And they don't listen most of the time. This sort of stuff is systemic. And what it does is it starts to change who it is that gets into the system. Who gets in here? Political parties control right down to the roots who gets into the system. If you get rid of a politician today because he or she's corrupt and you think that's great, you're just making an opening for another corrupt politician to jump in. Top of that, the really good, I've seen this, my own eyes, the most brilliant people that I saw at regional council level never got to be the politicians, the MPs, because the parties would not allow it, because these people were just straight talking, decent, experienced, honest people. They didn't want that. They wanted the Biden type, the person who would just literally be the puppet and do what they were asked to do. So unless you make these kinds of changes, you won't be able to get decent people at the grassroots level, and that the reputation of politics and electoral representation is raised and people start to respect it. You won't have it. As I say, it's like taking a tree and just snipping at the leaves because it looks a bit withered. You can't do that. You've got to look at the roots of the thing. But if you're constantly distracted away, oh, don't worry about the roots, just do this, the tree will be dead. The tree will not survive. So the roots of the system you've got to look at. And in our system, it's easy to fix. Easy. Simple. So, thank you for listening. I would love to hear your comments. Please share my video with other people. If you really want to change our political system, isn't it wonderful to have somebody who's putting forward ideas? Look around. Look at the discussions that are going on. Wouldn't it be great to have a person who can put forward really good suggestions that might be uncomfortable for some of these people who should not be in politics, to challenge and say, come on, we want to change this. We're going to change it properly. Let's do some of this and let's have a discussion about this. Maybe out of these ideas, 5 or 6 ideas, maybe there's more. Maybe some of them we put on the back burner, but maybe there are some fundamental changes we can all agree on that we will fight to do now. And then you move towards it. You move towards it by getting people discussing it, getting into the mainstream, getting petitions raised, starting to challenge and debate politicians, sending letters to your MPs, whatever. But you start to bring this into the collective consciousness. Once you do that, we have amazing power. Then you can start to really change the thing. But it's not romantic or beautiful. It's the greasy mechanic going over to the car, getting underneath, pulling out a cable, flipping a switch, taking a nut off and put another one on and going, there you go, it works now. You can drive to your destination 1,000 miles away and your car will work reliably. It's a very mechanistic, systemic approach that we need. And then you'll see everything starts to come together. So thanks for listening, and join me again in my next rant. Take care. Bye-bye.